My name's David McGavran from MAXON. You may or may not know us, but we're happy to reintroduce ourselves to the Indian animation market. I've been in the industry for 26 years now, or actually even over that. It's kind of scary how long it's been. Computer programmer by trade, so not an artist. But my joy in life, my professional life, was to be able to play some small part in creating the tools that allow the artists to bring their amazing visions to life. And that's what MAXON has always done, and what MAXON employees love to do today. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what MAXON brings to animation and what animation is doing in the industry and what we see as trends in the industry. So MAXON, our main product is what we call MAXON 1. And some of these products you probably use, or the companies you work for use, or if they don't, you should be using them soon. We have tools like Cinema 4D, which is the original MAXON product, which is a DCC for all your 3D content creation needs. We have ZBrush, which is an Academy Award-winning product for digital sculpting. Red Giant, which brings all of the 2D, 2.5D, and 3D tools you need into Adobe tools like After Effects or DaVinci. And we have Redshift, which is the fastest renderer in the history and works with our great partners like AMD. And we have Forger, our iPad application. So these are some of the tools that MAXON brings to the industry that we're happy to talk about today. But let's take a step back and talk about the trends in the industry themselves. So if we look at animation and where it's come from, animation always started as a reaction between an artist and a medium, and that was often with a pen and paper or a pencil, and then they would draw their beliefs, and it was a very intimate experience as the artist sat there and worked, with a real hard medium. And that's where animation started, and they would make flip books, and then they would make them into movies, and this was very intimate, one-to-one artist experience. And that's sort of what's evolved throughout our industry. But as we've moved on to computer times, when you talk about Pixar and some of the original 3D animation films, the intimacy was somewhat lost, is that they did spectacular work into some of the best movies ever made coming out of Pixar, but they were now a different experience. The artist was sitting in front of a very large computer. It was more complicated, and it took a lot longer to get that vision to life. And so if you look at sort of some photos from the original Toy Story movie, you're seeing almost more tech and technology and numbers than definitely just the artist's intention in Toy Story. So these were, again, very changing times. These are actually probably slightly before my time in the industry, but these are how some of the best movies were made. But you can still see that they came back to that intimate experience of the animator. There was always a storyboard that someone drew first. There was always paper involved and a vision from the artist, because it's always about serving the artist. Our tools are nothing but a paintbrush that an artist uses. But there was this complexity going from what that vision was as an animator, as a drawer, to how long it took to get to the output in the 3D studio. So you'd be talking about days and weeks and months of rendering performance at this time to get these movies to show up. And so as this evolved, when you were talking about some of those original movies, or you were talking about maybe Jurassic Park, the artist, this creative person that's meant to be holding a paintbrush or a pencil, were sitting tied to these really large, powerful machines to do their work, which is an exciting time. It's fun, it's new learning, but it disconnects a little bit the artist from that medium. And so back at the time when MAXON was founded, which is more than 30 years ago, the idea with the founders of MAXON, Philip Losch, who's still our CTO, and others, and people at other companies as well, was, well, if we need this huge computer to do our work today, what could it look like if we can bring that to more artists, to more animators, to more people? How many people could put a Silicon Graphics supercomputer in their living room? And how many artists who are independent, who are trying to make a name for themselves that aren't at the biggest studio, could take advantage of a Silicon Graphics machine? Very few. So it was an elite community of people back in the early, in the 90s and the early 2000s that were allowed to do this work. So Maxon had the idea, and Philip Lush and his brother Christian had the idea, what would it look like if we brought that to a personal computer? And so back in those days came out the first Maxon product, which was called FastRay. I think it probably would have took 48 hours to render those 3 or 4 balls on the screen there. And this is what it looked like way back in the day. But it was a major step in the evolution of what the artists in this room do, right? This is bringing that technology from the untouchable Silicon Graphic workstation to something that someone can hold in their, have in their living room or in their office. And that quickly evolved to Cinema 4D, which was the easiest to use and is still the easiest to use, most powerful 3D software in the world. Now you're taking that ability to create something in that realm of Toy Story or some of the Pixar films, being able to do that at home. And so that was now the beginning of returning the intimacy that you saw from that original artist's intent of paper and pen or canvas back to being able to at least work in your living room. And that's really important. So for years and years and years, for over 20 years, and that's why this picture's a little bit old here, the logo for Maxon was 3D for the real world. How do you allow everyday animators, everyday artists to create in 3D and tell their stories in a new way? And that was a critical change in the history. And that was only in the 90s that artists were allowed to start creating in 3D at home, which now when you talk about the Garfield movie that just came out, obviously this is now something that the entire industry is doing, but these were the first steps of getting it into the hands of everyday artists that could work in a small studio, in a small team. We're also now creating our stories on virtual sets. We're not just going out into the real world and filming and then putting animation on top of it. We're now able to take major screens like the one behind me and create huge new worlds that we can animate inside of. And this is a trend that we're only seeing in the last 5 or 10 years, and this is actually from one of the Maxon customers who are doing this here, where you can take that animation that you're so proud of and bring it into a new virtual world where you can put live action behind it and interact in those virtual worlds. So everything about this industry is changing, and it's changing rapidly. But what we really want is to keep that artistic intent, because that's the joy of everything. A lot of people might talk about AI, but we actually really prefer at Maxon to work with the real intelligence, which is that of the artists who work with us on a daily basis, who use our tools, who have the true artistic intent. But in the end, it's the story. What did you want to tell as an artist? What did you want to intend? And that's what connects us. So when you're networking here, you're going to be talking about artists and the work they're working on and the things they're passionate about. That's what actually drives it, and that's what drives an audience. So people will watch content that really truly tells a story that connects different people, different regions of the world, different stories. That's still the driving factor as we change through this animation industry and all the challenges that were mentioned briefly today. As long as there's stories to be told, there's going to be need for the artists to tell them, and there's going to be an audience for the people to watch. And everyone has a story to tell. Every single artist out there, every single person in the world has a story to tell. So we're going to take a quick minute here, because I always love to play loud music and show really cool stuff, to take a focus on the artists that use the Maxon tools and the things they create. So I'm very proud to show the work of our artists, our community here at Maxon. people can now create the highest quality content, that stuff you just saw, they can create in a team of 1, 2, 3 people, and they can spread themselves around the world. How do we enable that? We need to harness that because creativity is fast. If you have to wait for 30 hours to see if something worked or not, you're going to lose that spark. So we need to harness the power of creativity because the speed is critical, and we do that with our partners like AMD, who's also here today. So when we brought Redshift to the Maxon family, it was and is the fastest GPU rendering technology in the world to make those photorealistic images come to life. But at the time, it only ran on the most expensive, biggest NVIDIA hardware. We've now taken Redshift and made it run everywhere. So you can now run Redshift on your laptop at full power. You can run it on Mac, you can run it on Windows, you can run it on AMD, who worked very closely with us on that, and you can run it on NVIDIA, on Intel. You can take it with you. You can be in motion with it on your laptop, where you used to be chained to a big desktop machine. That, again, gives the artist the ability to feel creative no matter where they are, and they can do it faster. On top of that, when you're doing a lot of this work, the world is complex, and you want to be able to simulate it. What does fire do? You can draw and paint every frame. That's beautiful and spectacular, but you can also run a simulation of fire or of particles or of cloth. What does cloth do when someone walks across the stage? So things that weren't possible 10 years ago, you can now do on your laptop. In Cinema 4D, we have brought out GPU-accelerated simulations for rigid bodies, for soft bodies, for cloth, for fire, for particles, all running at intensely amazing speeds on your laptop, on your AMD device, on your desktop machine. So wherever you are, you can create magical things that weren't possible before using actually real-world simulation technologies. And that allows you to bring your dreams to life. And that's what's going to change the industry, and that's what's going to enable India to have this huge emerging market that they have at their fingertips, because you can now do it so much more personal, so much more intimate in the computer at your home, in a small team, working with people around the world because of the way we can communicate now. You can be participating in worldwide productions sitting in your living room. And you can learn from each other, right? If you're just working in one building with one set of people, you have one set of ideas around you, but if you bring that to the world and you work with people and collaborate with people around the world, you're going to learn from each other. So these teams can be worldwide and spectacular, and it keeps that human touch. You can keep that intimacy with the animation and the art that you're creating. But the power that we need for some of this creativity in the 3D space hasn't really been there yet. And we're taking that as a mission at Maxon to return to the intimacy of a paper and pen directly in you, so you can work wherever the inspiration is. And so what we find is that the artist is still the happiest because the hand is still the most creative tool. What can we, how do we connect our vision in our brain to the artwork that we're doing is through the hand. And so today I'm going to show something. We're going to give the first look of what ZBrush looks like when you have the entire power of ZBrush, the Academy Award-winning 3D sculpting software that has changed every movie and game in the world. What does that look if we can return the intimacy back to a pen and a paper, in this case, ZBrush for the iPad. So for today, you get the first look. Nobody's seen this yet. I hope you enjoy it. Here we are. Maxon's goal is to continue to enable artists to bring their vision to life in the most powerful way possible, but also in the most intimate way possible, working on the devices that they want, no matter where they are. And we're going to continue working with the industry to enable these technologies through our partners that you'll see at the show today. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be here to talk in front of you, and I really look forward to meeting as many of you as possible in the next two days. For me, it's important to be here to network with this group of people so that Maxon can stay connected with the market in India and all the other places around the world. So thank you very much. I hope everybody has an amazing show, and I look forward to meeting everybody.